Yo, what's going on, guys? So this is a really quick video on whether or not rest is something you should do if you ever have pain and discomfort, okay? So this is really important, and basically pain is basically a warning signal. So anytime you feel discomfort, it doesn't necessarily mean there's some sort of injury. So this concept is crazy important. You're always at one point when you're training, you're gonna feel some sort of discomfort. So there's certain times where you should be resting. It's something that you should definitely stop doing. Those cases are very rare, right? So the cases in which you should absolutely stop: concussions, you broke your bone, some sort of sharp pain, like acute pain, that's typically when you wanna stop, okay? But anytime you have like dull, achy stuff, a little bit of like, discomfort here and there, should you rest? So here's the reason why you should not rest, okay? This is a very important concept, and I hope this provides a tremendous amount of value, okay? So if you think about kind of your body, kind of like a capacity, it means that sometimes if you do too much, there could be too much load going through your body, okay? So the best way of explaining this is actually through a running analogy. So imagine I'm a runner, and every single day I ran 5 kilometers. That's my baseline, right? That means like every single day I wake up, I can run 5 kilometers, no big deal. It's kind of like my current capacity, right? It's a cup. So if I'm running 5 kilometers, I pour water into that cup, 5 kilometers full, it's not gonna start to overflow because you're very used to it, okay? So one day, super sunny outside, just like today in Vancouver, and we start to run double, right? Let's just run 10 kilometers for whatever reason, right? Why? Because it's really nice. So now you doubled your load. You doubled your load, but your capacity is only 5 kilometers. So what's gonna happen is you're pouring all this water into this cup. We're gonna pour double the amount of water, which then causes the cup to start to overflow. Now, if the cup starts to overflow, that's when you start to get pain, discomfort, a little bit achiness, and then it even exceeds that, you'll probably get a little bit of like sharper pain, okay? So here's the deal. If you just rest, if you do nothing, which is what everyone does, like let's just say you're going for a run, you run 5 kilometers, and all of a sudden you run 10 kilometers, you come back, you're like super sore. So everyone just rests here. They do nothing for like 2-3 weeks. Well, guess what happens to your capacity? It starts to drop. It gets lower, right? It gets a lot less, right? You can handle less load, and that means you rest for like 2-3 weeks, the cup gets smaller, your entire capacity gets smaller. So now when you return to running 3 weeks later, your capacity is a lot weaker, a lot less. So now you try to run your 5 kilometer baseline, you start to overload your capacity. You start to overflow the water. And so now you're kind of go through this very vicious cycle. People think that you should rest even more, and when you start to rest even more, your muscle atrophies, your capacity gets lower, and then you just go through this vicious cycle. And for people who are a lot older, like 70, 80 years old, we call this the deconditioning cycle. So it's basically a very frail kind of sarcopenia-like thing where people kind of go through this phase of like deconditioning. They kind of like get a lot weaker, then they get a fall, right? And then because they now fractured their hip, they can't move for like a whole month and a bit until they get surgery, and so everything gets weaker. So now they end up and they try to do stuff, but they're way more frail now. So the likelihood of them falling again is like much higher, and they go through this very vicious cycle. That's just like in like older age. Now, obviously we don't need to really think about that because no one in this program is more than 60 years old, right? But this is like the same kind of concept. And so this is just a little bit of information around like whether or not you should be resting. Should rest be one of the things that you should be doing? Well, it really depends on like the circumstances. 99% of the time, rest is not the answer. Unless you literally just like, you came out of a fight, Anderson Silva, you broke your leg, fracture, you fell on your wrist, concussion, like these are things where it's like you should actually rest. But for the most part, if it's muscocutaneous, it's muscular in origin, even potentially tendinous in origin, the answer is usually not rest, simply because when you start to rest, you come back, your muscles and your capacity is much lower, right? So that's like a really important concept. I hope you find this super helpful. But aside from that, hope you guys are having a good night. Peace.